Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown series, our show in which we look at the players that have been linked to Arsenal, break them down in an analytical and statistical way with the help of some experts to give you guys all the education you need to find out everything about these players. We'll be running these shows throughout the summer window. Any player that gets linked to Arsenal will be making sure to go in depth and giving you the exclusive insights on each of these players, giving you the stats breakdown, seeing how they compare to some of our other targets in our current Arsenal squad, and of course get the expert help as well. I hope you are good and well this afternoon. I am recording this on the day of the playoff final. Interesting to see, of course, who joins us in the Premier League next season and the Champions League final too, which may or may not have any impact on Arsenal's transfers this window. Manchester City are being linked with a couple of exits. Whether or not that impacts based upon the final this evening, we'll have to wait and see. But for today's show, we are focused on the Wolves midfielder Ruben Neves, who is an interesting player, someone that I have really been surprised at the move, of course, initially to Wolves when it happened from Porto, because he was very highly rated and linked with a whole host of big clubs. He went to Wolves as part of the beginnings, I suppose, of the Portuguese contingent at the club, helped them get promotion, and has really solidified himself as a Premier League quality player, which is why it surprises me that I've seen links in the first place to Arsenal. Now, the link spawned from a report that supposedly Wolves are willing to let Neves leave for around £35 million, to the surprise of a lot of people. And of course, naturally, we have then seen links to Arsenal, who are in the market for a central midfielder or two this summer. So without further ado, let's get the Wolves perspective. And I'm very happy to be joined by Dan from the Wolves Fancast. Dan has joined us quite a few times on the channel to preview and review games against Wolves and to give us some insight on other Wolves players as well. And so Dan's going to give you all the insight regarding Ruben Neves.
Hi Tom and all the Gooner Talk TV viewers out there. It's little Dan here from the Wolves Fancast, and I'm here to give you a brief insight on Ruben Neves, or how the Portuguese pronounce him, Ruben Neves. A centre midfielder, predominantly more of a defensive midfielder, sort of a midfielder that likes to break up play, keep passes ticking over. Last season he finished third in the Premier League stats for the most interceptions, beating the likes of N'Golo Kante, Declan Rice, twice as many interceptions as Dani Ceballos, sixth in the stats for the most attempted tackles, 50% completed, more than the likes of Thomas Partey, Granit Xhaka, who obviously you guys may be hoping can be replaced by Ruben. He's a player that I think a lot of people in the English community know over the last couple of seasons. His goal catalogue from distance and free kicks has been pretty well evident from sort of goal of the month competitions and whatnot. He's still the youngest captain in a UEFA Champions League game from his time at Porto. There's rumours that Wolves would be looking in the region of £35 million for him to be sold this summer. I personally don't see it happening myself, so I wouldn't get too excited on a move being imminent if there was one. He's got the Euros coming up, so hopefully he has a good Euros for his national side, Portugal, which then again the fee will rise significantly, we would imagine. You look back to last summer, Wolves sold Diogo Jota. As good a player as Diogo is, the fan base would be massively hurt and disappointed if Neves got sold this summer. He's still 24 years old and a key part of the future of this club, which I hope the owners understand, that we should be building our squad around the likes of him and Adama Traore, Raul Jimenez this summer, instead of looking to sell them on for big fees. From my own personal point of view, I think Ruben Neves would be absolutely amazing at Arsenal midfield, replacing the likes of Granit Xhaka or Dani Ceballos. I think he'd work really well against Thomas Partey, who can do all the physical work for him to allow him to get himself into the final third a bit more, where he can just create a lot more chances than what the likes of Xhaka has for you this season. But just to reiterate what I said, tabloid reports suggest that Wolves want £35 million plus for Ruben Neves. I think after the Euros, it's more likely going to be 40 to 50 before we consider selling a player that's still got 3 years left on his contract. And that's my brief insight on Ruben Neves, top quality player, maybe a bit out of Arsenal's market at the moment because as good as you are, another season out of Europe, you're fighting with us to sign players that maybe teams fighting for the Champions League would cherry pick at their will. Good luck for next season. Hope to see you at the Emirates myself, and hopefully you guys down at the Molineux. Up the Wolves.
Massive thank you to Dan. Oh, and massive respect for Dan always. Never skews, never wants to give a little bit of, help towards Arsenal. He's Wolves through and through, and I have absolute respect for that. And I think that I also appreciate the pronunciation in Portuguese, which is something that we always try and learn, how to pronounce things in the way they are intended. But I did get the sense from Dan there is a fear almost of losing Neves and seeing him at Arsenal or somewhere else. He's a very liked character and liked player, very much so in the Wolves team. And I'm surprised that the club and these links that are coming out from reputable sources that he would be available to leave for the right fee, whether that is the £35 million or whether that is for a larger fee. We'll have to wait and see. But I would be genuinely shocked to see Neves leave this summer. But it has not stopped, of course, a lot of Arsenal supporters getting quite hyped over the idea of bringing in Ruben Neves. And that's why it is important, of course, to have a look at how he stacks up against some of our other players. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at how he does compare to some of our players. And of course, one of our main, transfer targets in the area, Yves Bissouma. So we're going to look into that against Partey and Granit Xhaka, which should provide some interesting discussion in the chat box. And then at the end of this, I'll be jumping into the chat box to get your guys' thoughts and feelings around the idea of Ruben Neves coming into Arsenal. So let's kick off with the heat maps. And as you can see, very similar in the way to Bissouma, is all over the midfield. He is a workhorse in his coverage and where he moves in and around the pitch. He can deputise in different, either the right or left-hand side. He pushes into the opposition half to try and win the ball in the opposition half as well as his own. So that's really strong. He's not kind of like skewed to one way or another. He's very versatile for a side of midfield there. And when you've got players like Dendoncker and Moutinho and these guys in the midfield, he doesn't shy away from putting a shift in. And so that is obviously a really good part to have, that he doesn't fit a specific mould of a position on either side of the pitch. Going into his defensive duels, what from Dan was saying, he's a real guy that absolutely loves a tackle, and seeing the percentage of those defensive duels being won at 59.4%, it's a very good return. It's not as high as Partey and Bissouma, but he does come out with the highest frequency of defensive duels that he gets involved in. Interceptions, again, very tenacious in wanting to win the ball back, and 6.01 interceptions against the others in our comparison chart does certainly show that. Losses, though, he is, as I say, someone who's tenacious and does try to get the ball moving, and so he therefore does lose the ball more than the other players in our comparison, with 41% of that being in his own half. So he's losing around 4 of the passes he makes, or in the possession of the ball, about 4 times per game, which is a little concern because it is quite high. But he does recover some of that with his recoveries, 8.91. But as we always try to look at on the tactical breakdown, when you see the recovery against the losses ratio, when you see that the recovery is of a higher standard compared to the losses, that's what you're looking for in that kind of comfortable, kind of confident area of the midfield. You see it with the others on our list. Every single other player in our comparison chart here has higher recoveries in comparison to their losses. Neves is the only one that doesn't. It's important to have that fair, balanced review and point out the good and bad points of his game. Looking into his passing, again, coming out on the lower end of the spectrum of our comparison here at 58.82 passes with an only 86.2% passing accuracy, which is lower than the other guys on our list. Long passes, though, he comes out very much so more frequently than the others on our list. 7.51 attempted per game, trying to switch those balls, play those balls into the final third over the top of the defence at the same time, finding his players in advantageous and spacious areas of the pitch with a 57.1% accuracy. Nowhere close to, say, Granit Xhaka's passing accuracy, but it is kind of similar to that of Thomas Partey. Definitely blows away Bissouma in this area of his passing game. Passes into the final third is also something which is we like looking at as kind of a midfielder from a deeper position, being able to progress the ball further up the pitch. And 10.52 is a very strong return for those passes into the final third, as is a 78% passing accuracy, whilst it is lower than the others on our list, the 78% is still pretty good. Granit Xhaka coming out at 87.4, much higher, as we know from his kind of relationship with the left back. That's how he likes to play. But Neves, you can see him all over the pitch playing the ball into those final third positions. A statistic that we've added for our midfielders this time around is looking at how they pass it into the box. And this is the different variable that Neves does give you in comparison to the likes of Bissouma, Partey and Xhaka, is that he more frequently tries to get the ball into the box to create more chances. That's definitely an accolade that goes with him, much higher than that of the others at 2.1 passes per game and per league game, I should say. He has got one of the lower sides of accuracy, but that probably does come from trying to play these passes more often during matches as well. If we look at the forward to backward pass ratio, he is a very progressive player and a more positive thinking player, more than 3 times the forward passes compared to backward passes, which puts him on kind of just a below the level of Thomas Partey and that forward to backward pass ratio, and above both Granit Xhaka and Yves Bissouma. Looking at his dribbling, this is where he does kind of fall down. He's not your type to pick up the ball and run with it. That's not what he's about. 0.66 dribbles per game is less than Granit Xhaka on the ball. So if you want to talk about mobility, whilst he gets about the pitch when he's definitely off the ball, when he moves about more in out of possession, when he's in possession, he likes to take it and move it on rather than moving around the pitch with the ball at his feet, more to keeping the game ticking over. He's not your Partey and Bissouma, and maybe that gives you a nice contrast to say putting him next to someone like Thomas Partey in comparison to a Bissouma who would be more mobile when on the ball and transitioning the ball. This is also shown in the progressive runs that he makes. 0.81 is lower than all of the others on our list. So if you were looking for someone to partner Partey that was going to be a more progressor of the ball in terms of when in possession and on it in comparison to their passing, that's not what you're going to get from Ruben Neves. He's not going to give you that progression when in possession through dribbling. It's going to come from the passes that he plays rather than his on-the-ball movement. Finally, looking at his shooting, it's certainly somewhere that Neves is known for his long-range shooting, and you can see that with the frequency of shots that he takes, 2.1 shots per game, which is a hell of a lot more. We think about Granit Xhaka as a bit of a long shot specialist, but Neves takes it to another level in terms of frequency. You can see how many shots he's taken from outside the box this season with the graphic there. But interestingly so, the shots in the Premier League that have gone in are the pink ones in the graphic, which have been ironically inside the box. So whilst he's taken a fair chunk of shots from outside of the box, it's actually been the ones that have inside that have hit the back of the net, which is rather intriguing. And when he does take those long shots, it's typically, if you look at where they're kind of where you see them focus, it's very central, the ones that are hitting the target. When he picks up one for, like, if you say use the 60 or the 6-yard box as a little bit of an indicator of how the width of that area of the pitch, usually the shots from outside of those 2 lines of the 6-yard box aren't hitting the back of the target, or hitting the back of the net rather. But actually, when he takes the shots from within those 2 lines of the 6-yard box, if you think about an imaginary line coming down from either side of the box, that's when they're more likely to be accurate for him. So he tends to try and do those shots from that area of the pitch. When he gets into the area of the middle of the box just outside, he does like to take an effort in comparison to everyone else on this list. What did surprise me, though, is that Thomas Partey's shooting accuracy is as high as 15.4%. I thought it was going to be about a tenth of that from the way he's played for us this season. Anyway, that does conclude all of the statistical comparisons for Ruben Neves. He is very much a different player to who he'd be partnered with in either Yves Bissouma or Thomas Partey. He is not the type that takes the ball, runs with it. A lot of his game when in possession is focused around his passing, which is ironically a little bit lower in terms of the general passing of accuracy and frequency in comparison to the likes of Granit Xhaka. But he is a little bit more proactive into the way that he moves the ball into the box more frequently, but only 0.5, just over, times more than Granit Xhaka per 90, of course. So we have moved to the point of the show where we get your guys' thoughts in the chat box. First off, a massive thank you to Kim B for joining up as a member. Really appreciate your support, mate. You've joined a fantastic group of people, and welcome to the group. Let's see what you guys are saying then about Ruben Neves. AB says, other than Neves, who isn't even that bad, I have to say that I am genuinely surprised that I have liked every single player that we've been linked with, which is quite nice for once. It's a nice change. Although Moussa Dembele was a little bit of wasn't so keen on that one. Vuk says, Neves is a slight upgrade from Granit Xhaka. I like Bissouma more. I agree with this. I think that he is ever so slightly better upgrade upon Granit Xhaka in that area. But this is the thing, is that if we were keeping Granit Xhaka, I wouldn't have spent the money to go out and get a Ruben Neves, because it's not, for me, would have been worth investing in that amount of money for a player that's only ever so slightly, in my view, better than Granit Xhaka. If you were losing Granit Xhaka, as it seems like we might be, if we're in the market to bring in 2 central midfielders this summer, that's when my mind changes, because you're bringing in someone that's better than Granit Xhaka on top of hopefully a Basuma or someone else of that mould. It's important that you add variation to the team, and I think Neves would certainly do that for Arsenal. A Skills disagrees, though. It says Xhaka is better than Neves, and it would be silly to sell Xhaka and bring in Neves in a net loss. Very interesting. Emmanuel says, nah, not for me. Just like Neves, let's pass up. There are better players out there. Mark says, I think Basuma and Buendia would be a better fit with Partey in comparison to buying someone like Neves, which is very interesting. Balaji says, a different player to Xhaka or Partey. Ruben Neves will give us more control. We definitely need it. Not sure he will be an upgrade to our midfield, though. JW is definitely not a fan of Neves and says, no, not having Neves at all. I think that dismissing him entirely is a bit harsh. As I said, I think he's a little bit better than what Granit Xhaka is for us right now, and certainly would be an upgrade considering the fact he's still only 24. He's got a hell of a lot more improvement and development to go in comparison to Granit Xhaka, who's in his prime right now. I think he's got a big kind of future ahead of him still, and will move on, I imagine, one day and get to that next step, maybe beyond Wolves. Liam says, replacing Xhaka with Neves is a big mistake. Akash says, if not Basuma, who else at the same level is available that you would want us to buy? Within the Premier League or in that area, there's not too many that I would look at targeting. I don't think Anguissa from Fulham is kind of on that level. I would start to more branch out to, say, Spain and have a look at Joan Jordan from Sevilla or Guido Rodriguez from Real Betis, 2 very mobile players on the ball that are very good in that area and certainly highly rated. It's about moving on, as Drew talked about with Mangala at Frankfurt. Is it Frankfurt? I think it might be. The Belgian midfielder international, has done very well there, according to Drew, and he's someone that he very much likes as a possible alternative in that area of the pitch. But for me, I think it should be Basuma all the way, going for and trying to get him into the team personally. Craig says, would we sign Neves and Basuma if Xhaka and Torreira, Guendouzi, etc. leave? I think we would be maybe in the market for 2 central midfielders. Whether or not we do that, or whether we promote from within with like an Aziz, or we keep an Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I don't know. Jesse says, you like Basuma and Partey's partnership until the African Cup of Nations is on and they both leave and Arsenal start losing points. You consider all of that? Of course I consider that. I think when you think about bringing in Basuma, and if you're losing Xhaka, you would then bring in another midfielder. That then midfielder can be teamed up with a Willett, can be teamed up with giving Aziz some time. If Ainsley Maitland-Niles is still at the club, you can give him those minutes, or you can change the system and play a different style. You don't necessarily have to play with those 2 central midfielders as a pivot. You could move, say, the Basuma that we've got into a number 6 role and play Smith Rowe alongside a Joe Willett to give you a little bit more attacking verve during those games. I think just because Basuma's going off to the African Cup of Nations for 1 month, which doesn't even guarantee them progressing that far into the tournament, it could be only a couple of weeks. I don't think it's enough to rule out that possibility. I really don't. Pachen says, Tom, if Torreira, etc. is not sold, there would be no upgrade. And that's why I very much expect them to be sold. So do not worry about that at all. Kanav says, with Buendia, Basuma, maybe Top Soba, Aubameyang, Pepe, Laka, Leno, and the youngsters, I have a feeling that the Champions League, or at least the Europa League juice, is coming. What do you think? I think you're optimistic. I like it. I like your optimism, Sam. But I'm not going to be putting any predictions down until I see the end of the transfer window. It's as simple as that. Alexander Troy says, I wonder what you guys will do with Torreira, because if you were to sell him, you'd make a huge loss, and he didn't do much for us. I mean, we have Marcos Llorente, Saul Koke, though, speaking as an Atletico fan. I think that with Lucas Torreira, of course, he hasn't got too many minutes at Atleti this season. He is wanting to leave. His dream scenario is going off to Boca Juniors, which don't have a lot of money, which would then be a loan, coming back with just a year left on his deal, which would leave us in a very similar situation to we find ourselves with Guendouzi. So I think we should just look to sell him if we can. Fiorentina are supposedly a side that are interested in him. So in the midfield, it's an area that we need to focus on. Ajit says, how about Neves, Berger, and Basuma and Buendia? That would be perfect. 2 contrasting centre midfielders. Neves alongside, I mean, Berger, I understand, is very different to Basuma. Basuma's your more disciplined part of the central midfield, closer to a 6, whereas Berger is your box to box, and much more different in that sense, and carries the ball a lot more, and he's a lot more physical as well because of his height and physicality. Anyway, even though he's not the best in the air, ironically, but still a lot more physical in his presence. I believe that is probably where we're going to finish off today's show, because got lots of stuff to do today, and got to get you some good content for tomorrow as well. As always, there will be the 8 a.m. morning transfer shows. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. We do an 8 a.m. transfer show updating you with all the latest Arsenal information every single day. And then any new links to any Arsenal transfer targets, we do a dedicated show breaking them down with expert insight, all of the good stuff. Please make sure you share the videos around. If you follow us on Twitter, I'd really appreciate if you could share the videos just by retweeting them when we tweet out the videos, so more people see them, more people learn about the channel, and more people get educated about the players that we're linked to as well. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, as always, and as always, up the Arsenal.